Welcome to session 7. Okay, our third speaker is Mr. William Thomson, who is an attorney of the High Court of South Africa and an accredited commercial and civil mediator with the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution. Mr. Thompson's presentation is entitled Electronic Resource Agreements and the Role of Principled Negotiation Skills versus Positional Bargaining.
Good afternoon to everybody. It's a real privilege to be here. Glenn's showing me the technology, a little timer that goes here. Often I do the old sort of way, I just put my watch on there and have a look at it. And I see in the program here that you are expecting me to be talking to you about exploring negotiating agreements without giving in, and how to, do you just win in agreements, and so on and so on and so on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to chat to you that it's got absolutely nothing to do with the High Court or any courts or any litigation whatsoever. And as somebody once said to me, that law is for the failed person, the person who can't reach an agreement between each other, and then they have to approach the courts. And for me in this country, I think there's been some criticism, or not criticism, it's thank goodness we have a constitutional court and we have the courts, because at the moment the country is actually largely being run by the courts. And for me the court's a bit like the parents. And when the children can't sort things out, and the parents step in. And I think that, I just want to go a quick plug for our Chief Justice, Mogoeng. I think there was quite a bit of skepticism when he became Chief Justice. People thought about his alignment to the President and also possibly some of his own fundamental views religiously, but I think he's proved to be one of the most independent thinking people. Now, I'm going to chat to you this morning and say to you that we're going to push law aside. So I'm an attorney, and I can do that, and to say that mediating and negotiating and getting to yes, this is this book by William Ury and Roger Fisher called Getting to Yes from the Harvard Negotiation Project, is going to be where I'm going to be speaking, and I'll be sharing some of that with you. And to say that last year I was around between Swanee and Johannesburg, and I heard on 702 they were talking about the World Economic Forum's what they put together was, they said, the top 10 skills required by individuals and organizations for 2016 and for 2020 as individuals and as organizations. And my left brain kicked in. I was in the traffic and I was thinking technical skills, finance skills, IT skills, social media skills, and there's not a single technical skill in those top 10 skills. Not a single one. And not a single contract, and not a single legal skill or anything like that. The top one is about complex problem solving, the ability to actually resolve complex problems. Now, I often think of that wonderful TV series MacGyver, and how MacGyver, you could put him into any situation and somehow he would find his way out of that. And there was something about it that I knew that that was impossible, but there was something about his sense of anything is doable. And that's largely the work that I do. I am an attorney, but I'm a senior commissioner in the CCMA. I flew in last night from Sishen, where I had Anglo-American, I had NUM, I had Solidarity, and I had AMCU. And in fact, in the last few weeks, last week, this time I was with an aeronautical components company, a place in South Africa that makes the parts for, if those of you flew into KwaZulu-Natal, those aeroplanes, and that's being made by South African people with trade unions. But very often there's conflict between the trade unions and between the employers, and which can lead to all sorts of difficulties, and I'll speak a little bit about that too. But what I want to do is kick off and say to all of you now, oh, by the way, in addition to complex problem solving, it was interpersonal skills, so very high EQ skills, which I train and I teach, and in fact psychologists have said up to 80% of our communication is non-verbal too. So I am, as a mediator, often picking up what's not being said, and I'm trying to train negotiators to often look at what's not being said in the room as well. And the last skill was about creative thinking as well, and of course negotiation skills, and all of that is also pretty linked to each other. What I want to do is kick off and ask you a question. This is going to be an interactive session. I've done many talks, and the cool thing these days is not to have words on your slides like I've actually got at the moment. It's actually have pictures, and there's something new called Pecha Kucha, which is actually how to give a presentation in 6 minutes and 20 seconds with 20 slides that keep rolling, and you've got 20 seconds per slide. It's because sometimes people speak for too long on their slides. And so what I want to do is ask all of you in the room to quickly think about, if you had unlimited time and resources, and I'm throwing in absolutely everything, financial support, absolutely everything you could possibly think of that could hold you back. What would you do in the next 1 to 6 weeks? What would you do in the next 1 to 6 months? And what would you do in the next 3 to 6 years? The reason I'm saying that is very often people think, oh, I'm going to go on a holiday somewhere. Holidays, you know what, I think we can get bored after having too many holidays. And it really is probably about the needing to recoup and recharge ourselves. But after that, I honestly believe that every single person in this room has a calling, has a purpose, and is created uniquely with a mix of skills. And very often we haven't unpacked that mix of skills, or it has been so suppressed that we're not actually using this. So I want you to think about that, and to take this and to say, what would you do in the next 6 weeks? What would you do in the next 6 months? And what would you do in the next 3 to 6 years? Last year I was lecturing up in Gauteng, and somebody won an 87 million rand in the lotto up in Limpopo province, and it was quite interesting to ponder, you know, but I'm sure we don't need as much as 87 million rand. Now I want to ask you, what is your BATNA? Can I just see by a show of hands? I don't want you to call it out, but has anyone in the room actually heard of BATNA? I can see one guy at the back. Anybody else? 2, 3 people. What is your BATNA? Okay, so I'm not going to answer what your BATNA is, but can I tell you all you've all got BATNA? And you should have BATNA. By the time you leave here, you're going to take your BATNA with you. And hopefully for the rest of your life, you'll be some horrified looks. Hopefully for the rest of your life, you are going to be tapping into your BATNA in every single conversation, every single conflict, every single negotiation. Now, I want to ask you, and I want you to engage me with a show of hands now. Mary has in her backyard. First of all, can I see by a show of hands, how many people have been in a Beetle or driven a Beetle, one of those really old Beetles? And I can see here people probably from the 1960s. I'm not saying there are people that very definitely, and I'm very careful with age. Being a human rights lawyer and dealing with diversity issues and discrimination issues. So Beetles, 1960s, 1970s, they stopped production in South Africa in the 1970s. Brazil carried on for longer, and then they've got some newer ones, which aren't really very much like old ones. But so in there was 1962 Beetle. Mary had in her yard this Beetle, and she'd been needing to take it to the scrapyard and dump it. And she hadn't really got around to it. And then John, who's a collector of old Beetles, he came along one day and he was walking past, and unbeknown to him that she was going to scrap it, he saw it and he made an offer of 10,000 rand for this Beetle. It probably had grass growing up through it, and maybe a bit rusty and not in great condition. How many in this room, I'll be absolutely honest with me, how many in this room, if you were Mary now, would take that 10,000 rand? He's got hard cash in South African rands. You can smell it, you can feel it, you can don't taste it. How many of you would take that 10,000 rand? Let's just have a look in the room here quickly. Okay, let's just see, don't be shy, just please show your hands, okay? Alright, so quite a few of you would take that 10,000 rand from John. You're getting it right now, you can have it, you can count it out, and you've got it. Alright, next scenario. Mary says she'd like to think about it, and she asks John to come back the next day. That evening she puts an advert on the internet for sale, 1962 Beetle, any offers. She gets a response from a museum that says we'd love to have it, but we don't have the cash. But if you donate it, we will put a plaque there that it's, you know, with your name in perpetuity. And on top of that, you can actually get a 20,000 rand tax rebate for that donation. And she checks with her commissioner, her advisors, and they say you can do that. Now, let's have a look. How many of you would now, knowing this, take this option? Let's have a look. Okay, so there's a number of new people. Some people who voted now, they're probably thinking, let's do a shift. I do this with many people across many different levels of income in the country. Some need the 10,000 immediately. Some don't want to go this route because their tax affairs are not in order. So they're not even going to go anywhere near that. Then, in addition to that, the next one is, in addition to the former advert, Mary then sends out internet query as follows. Wanted a 1962 Beetle for a collection, and she gets 2 responses. The first is from somebody who offers her an unrestored one for 80,000 rand, and another one from somebody who offers her a restored one for 100,000 rand. And these figures are pretty accurate because I actually know somebody with a 62 Beetle who said he'd take nothing less than about 80,000 for it. Now John comes back and he says to Mary, what is your response to my 10,000 that I offered you yesterday? Now if you were Mary, knowing what you now know, what would you do? Let's just have, you can call out now. Let's see. So some people are going to say ask for 100. How many would be looking for a figure that's higher than 20,000 at this stage? Okay, so I see a lot of nodding heads, a lot of hands going up. All right. Okay. Mary says 100,000 rand, John offers her 50,000 rand, they haggle and they eventually settle on 70,000 rand. Now I'm going to come back to that little scenario because we are kind of doing that every day. We are consciously and unconsciously negotiating every single day. The trouble is that sometimes we're not doing it consciously, sometimes we're doing it unconsciously, and sometimes we're getting stuck in what's called positions. I was asked as a senior commissioner in the CCMA who does a lot of work with trade unions and government and employers to facilitate a process in Gallagher Estate in 2011. And don't worry about the labour relations deteriorating, that's my job. Don't worry about the CCMA being more proactive, that's my job. But in the middle, we found that the level of negotiation skills with trade union negotiators, government negotiators, and employer negotiators was at an all-time low. And we need to have a look at that. And if you look at that horse there, this horse is tied to this chair here. And I want to ask you the question, how many of you, from the first question I asked you about if you had unlimited time and resources, what would you do? And I've asked this question to many of my students across the country, and I ask it to many trade union people and many employers and many government people. And people have often dashed those dreams that they've had as young people, and they've often, as they become slightly older, because of their own internal limiting thoughts, I can't do this. Or because other people have actually given them the limiting thoughts. And if you Google, well, in fact, it's actually now said that the 5 people you spend most of your time with, you are likely to become the average of that. And as a lawyer, looking at Louis at the moment, as a lawyer, we only base it on evidence and reliable, admissible evidence. But because it's on the Google, because it's on the internet, we can trust it, of course. You know, we know that. All right, that's just a joke. Yeah. But how many of us are like that horse? How many of us have given up? And how many of us are standing? That's a chair that you can literally pick up with one finger. But that horse feels a victim. And so often in life, in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces, we feel I am here because of those parents or those teachers or those people in that community, or because of my race or my gender or my ability or my disability or my sexual orientation or whatever. And so that horse is standing there tied to that chair, believing it can't move and do that. This is what characterizes largely in South Africa the type of collective bargaining that I'm involved in. Party A is often either the trade union or employer, Party B is the other party, and what they often do is they come in and make a demand. Often think of the 12,500 for rock drillers and various other, it seems to be a magical number now, that one, wherever I go. And the parties haggle and haggle. You can even see the first steps of negotiating, and maybe this happens between yourselves in your negotiating situations. I hope not, but where we often refer to the insult zone, where parties actually just give an insulting high offer, an insulting low offer, and they haggle and very often get to a compromise in the middle, which is not a sustainable compromise. And I'll give you a little picture of 2 children who were playing in a garden, a little boy and a little girl, and an orange fell from the tree. And they were fighting over this orange, and they ran inside, and this is nothing about how men or women deal with issues, but their father was sitting and watching TV, and he said, "What's going on?" And they both said, I want, and they wanted the orange. So he said, "Well, go and get a knife, and I'll cut it in half, and you can have half, and you can have half." And they went to the kitchen, and the mother was busy preparing food, and she said, "What do you want the knife for?" And she didn't want her kids running around with the knife. And she probed the little boy and the little girl, and eventually they said, I want. And she wanted to understand behind these positions, what do they really want here? It really turned out, after a lot of probing, the little girl actually wanted the skin of the orange because she wanted to make marmalade, and the little boy wanted the center of the orange, and so she peeled the orange, and he got 100% of what he wanted, and she got 100% of what he wanted. And so what I'm talking about here is how we move from very positional to I want. And something that comes through quite clearly is often we know what we want, but we don't often know what our underlying needs and interests behind that. 2 people, I'm also a commercial mediator, spent 10 million rand haggling over a 1 million rand motor vehicle. 2 people. And according to my timer, I've been up for 14 minutes. Oh, sorry, it says 5 minutes. Yes, absolutely wrong. So they spent 10 million rand haggling over a 1 million rand vehicle because of their egos and because of what they wanted. They were not prepared to get to needs and interests. And that's very often what I'm faced with in labour disputes. That was taken up Marikana, another one at Marikana there. And as I travel around the country, people are wanting to know why our strikes are so violent. That was Deputy President Ramaphosa, who asked me to facilitate a process in Nedlac with the Minister of Labour, looking at the state of collective bargaining, which is in a very dysfunctional state, and so that's why we're spending so much time. So I've done a lot of work, right from, some of you might know Charlie's Bakery in Cape Town, went onto TV, and right from Charlie's Bakery with cupcakes, right through to catalytic converters where there's platinum and platinum mines, and in between gold mines, where we've actually had the most incredible things happen. It's a gold mine in the Free State, Harmony Gold and Num, and they have doubled their productivity, and they're sharing all the incentives with each other because they've shifted from positions in terms of that. Yesterday I was in Sishen, up near Uppington, with AMCU, NUM, Solidarity and Anglo-American, and where we had people moving from their positions and shifting into looking at what was common between them. That's a company in the Eastern Cape manufacturing Willard batteries. They were facing closure, and what they did was they said we can either retrench everybody, it's cheaper to import batteries from China and India, or we can start getting together and discovering what each other's needs and interests are and start to collaborate about more what we have in common there. That's a hospital, and a Harwood, also that's a process there. For those of you like chocolates, that's Nestle and Food and Allied Workers Union in East London. They were given 6 months to turn their relationship around and find getting to yes with each other. Alternatively, they were going to shut that plant down. And all of those have come together and started to engage each other in ways of discovering each other's needs and interests and what is of benefit to both. That's a pharmaceuticals company, also in the Eastern Cape, Aspen Pharmaceuticals with their union. That was the second day. They weren't smiling on the first day at all. They are now taking work away from other countries in Australia, Australia and various other countries, and selling those products made by also-speaking, English-speaking Afrikaans people in the Eastern Cape. And out of this book, Getting to Yes, which I very, very highly recommend, and many of you might have them in your libraries, William Ury and Roger Fisher, a wonderful also YouTube clip, The Walk from No to Yes by William Ury, and also one called The Power of Listening. And the gist of the book comes out with 4 key things here. When we go into negotiations, we need to separate people from the problem. Focus on the problem, don't attack the person. Separate positions from needs and interests. Try and understand what the needs and interests are. Generate a variety of options and use objective criteria when you're doing that. And so often the parties, if you look at that little graph, get stuck up at the top there, just in terms of party A, party B. And this could be in the kind of commercial negotiations you have, can be in labour negotiations, and never get below that surface there to understand. And you can see right in the middle there's a whole area of common interest to the parties if they really seek that. As the parties seek, what can be mutual gain there? And it says there in the bold print, as it turns out, the negotiators with the best reputations are the ones that usually always get a good deal for the other side. And psychologists have shown that 80% of our communication, by being non-verbal, is being aware of that, that we're not giving stuff away. And I'm so conscious when I train negotiators and mediators of their own emotional intelligence and their own awareness of self. And the more self-aware and in control of one's own emotions, the better it is when one goes into negotiations. There's 2 negotiators really trying to seek to understand each other's needs and interests. They're really trying to do that. But there's another 2 negotiators who just saying, I want to get as much as I can for myself. I'm not actually interested in the other party. This is very narcissistic type, me. And sometimes we end up in negotiations, and I was mindful of this as I'm talking to you. Sometimes you might be in negotiations like this, and which one are you and which side are you? And what you will try and do is try and understand as much as possible, where is that other party coming from? Let me try and ask as many questions. But you also need to be a skilled negotiator. You need to know when, at what point is this person not sharing information, not bargaining in good faith. And at what point do I need to go to Louis and I need to come to William and say, we might need to go to the parent now and have some litigation. And that is what we refer to as the interface in labour negotiations, where you've got your table in the middle and you've got your union on one side, you've got your employer on the other side, and negotiating across the table. And what I'm finding more and more, I've just spent my life on aeroplanes and in different cities, in and out of government, business and labour, is very often you can get understanding across the table because the parties have started to engage each other. They've started to understand each other's underlying needs and interests. And then they've got to sometimes go back to constituencies. They've got to go back to shareholders. They've got to go back, in the case of trade unions or community disputes or political disputes, back to groups that are sometimes locked in positions or have different positions that are there as well. Just before I come to that, I just want to quickly say that that, having shared that with you, is when we negotiate, for all of us in this room, what I want to give to you as some takeaways in addition to this is 4 things. Is whenever one goes into negotiations, there are 4 things that we need to do. We need to, well, firstly, we need to prepare very well. That's not one of the 4. But when we do prepare, what we need to do is we need to actually know what our needs and interests actually are. And I say this to unions and I say it to employers. And if you're going into a contractual one, whether you're buying a car or getting a cell phone contract or negotiating a lease or negotiating some kind of publication deal, or you're doing something. And by the way, I am one of the mediators, and the fees must fall in many of the universities across this country, so I'm very familiar with that as well. But you do need to know very, very clearly what are my needs and interests as an individual, or the constituency I'm representing, what are the needs and interests. That's the first thing. The second thing you need to know is what is your BATNA. What is your BATNA? Now you still are looking at me all like, what is BATNA? BATNA stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And what you're doing is every time you're negotiating, you're assessing what are my alternatives here. If I'm going to buy this car, or I'm going to get this publication, or I'm going to do this, are there other alternatives that I have if that doesn't work? Trade union members are constantly saying, if I can't get this wage deal, my alternatives might be to go on strike, or it might do this, or it might do that. Employers might be saying, if we don't get this deal, our alternatives, or if we do grant 12,500 rand, it might be our alternatives are to retrench staff, or to cut down, or to do the following kind of things. So what we need to do is we need to be very conscious and very mindful when we go into negotiations. What are my needs and interests? Or what am I being given as my mandate? And what are my alternatives to doing that? The second 2 are, what do I think the other party's needs and interests are? And I'm only going to get that by asking questions and trying to seek as much information from the other party to really understand what their needs and interests are. And what do I think they perceive their BATNA to be? What do they think their alternatives are? And through very good negotiating, very good questions, and very good listening, and very good what we call paraphrasing, 3 of the key interpersonal skills that we always train in negotiation and mediation, is if we can seek as much information as possible from them. Sometimes we can even show them their perception of their BATNA and how strong their case is isn't actually as strong as they really think it is. Often people come in, and when I sit in the CCMA, and you'll know the CCMA, when I mediate, often parties come in with an overinflated perception of how strong their case is. And through reality testing with the parties, in negotiation processes and in mediation processes, it helps the parties to come back and say, actually, if I really look at my situation, maybe it isn't quite as strong as I saw it. And it often gets people to shift their positions in negotiation rather than perceiving it as being very strong. And the last end of this that I want to share with you now is, back in the 1980s, the company Mercedes-Benz, I won't ask you who's driven Mercedes-Benzes as well, but the Beatles, terrible, terrible labor relations in the East London plant. And Daimler-Benz in Germany said, we're going to close that plant down because of the acrimonious relationships between management and labor. Those parties then eventually got together towards the end and did what I'm spending almost my life doing at the moment, which is called relationship building interventions between management and labor. And they had one. And some of you will remember that they built that car for Madiba in 1990, that red S-Class Mercedes-Benz, and they worked for free, and the company provided them the time and the infrastructure. Mercedes then built the first C-Class car during the 1990s, and then they built the second C-Class and the third C-Class, and now they're building the fourth one. There are 4 countries in the world that build that car, and we have to tender worldwide. And I think we're all very concerned about General Motors is pulling out of the country, because we need to be bringing people into the country rather than leaving the country. And that's through collaboration between management and labor, and I still believe we can do that. They are now building the C-Class. It's being built in 4 countries around the world: Germany, United States, China, and South Africa. Now let's just have, very quickly, let's not have the politically correct answer. Where would you say of those 4 countries would be the highest quality Mercedes-Benz being built? Germany, followed by? United States, followed by? Probably China? Yeah. South Africa, 5,238 workers, also speaking, Afrikaans speaking, English speaking, are building the highest quality C-Class Mercedes-Benz in the whole world. That's management and labor in South Africa, who found how to focus on the problem, not the person, separate needs and interests from positions, generate ways, and I have facilitated processes where I have got people wearing ANC hats, EFF hats, South African Communist Party hats, DA hats, UDM hats, AMCU hats, NUM hats, and various NUMSA hats, where they're able to put all of that aside. I've got some other photographs of where I'm doing role plays in the last few weeks, where I've got management and all three of those different unions, even yesterday up in session, where they are now collaborating and they're saying, we're going to build the very, very best. And so 6 artists, 11 kilometers of wire, 3 million beats, 232 hours, and 1 masterpiece. What am I talking about? It's these artists who came together, they were commissioned by Mercedes-Benz in East London to build a life-size Mercedes-Benz C-Class. And there it is, it's on display in East London. The German people can't believe the entrepreneurialness and the creativeness of South Africans. They've asked them to build another one and to take it to Germany. And that's my story. That's the potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'm inspired. Certainly today I'll go home after the SANLIC conference and say to my husband, I know what my BACNA is. I would like to take questions for the 3 speakers.
I want to ask the, or April and William, accreditation, and looking at accreditation all over the world for universities now, South Africa fits in on the ranking and the scales of university rankings, and what the government offers and 14% VAT. Is there any legal ramification or any legal angle that one can take to government and say you are actually deliberately stopping us of achieving higher accreditation rates, higher rankings in libraries, because you are limiting us to buy what we want to buy and get what we want to get with this 14%? That's Josh.
From my side, yes, but just my opinion, not necessarily what it is. Because anything, as much as we want to achieve anything, but if legally they need to be taxed, then it needs to be taxed. And we need to operate within that confinement of the law, of the tax. You can argue again why tax food, because we need to eat, otherwise we all die, but it needs to be taxed.
Yes, but if this is influencing the education, and this was not something that was always there, it came in on later years, is this something that one can go to the government as say SANLIC or NASA and say this is the impact of this 14% tax, and we cannot...
As a human rights lawyer and a constitutional lawyer, absolutely, yes. Get a whole group together and just take the case on. Yeah, you've got a right in the well. What I'm saying is, I don't know what the answer is going to be, but in terms of the rights and the rights to access, and you know, if it's prejudicing, you know, from an education point of view, very definitely you could make a case. Yeah.